Hi, YouTubers. So I wanted to make a video actually about death. Actually, it's just, I guess it's because of this whole sort of situation with the coronavirus, and that you're hearing so much information about it everywhere. I, as a result of that, was prompted to look up the wider context, to look at deaths by other infectious diseases, and to see, more generally speaking, what other kinds of deaths affected people on a larger scale, just to try and get in proportion the death rate and how many were being affected by it compared to other infectious diseases and compared to other diseases and illnesses and accidents more generally. And it all kind of led to a sort of slightly morbid curiosity, I suppose, but something we're all naturally bound to want to look into, I suppose, just because we're all bound to be affected, friends and family, and I suppose, put bluntly, we kind of all have to die somehow, I guess. I'm going to come on to discuss that actually and what that means. But just to give you some figures, something like 2 to 3 million people die of pneumonia each year. 1 million people die of road traffic accidents. Hundreds of thousands of people die of different infectious diseases, and that's every single year, isn't it? I suppose ultimately, when you look at it though, here's a statistic: 56 million people, but it's kind of a rough estimate. 50 to 60 million people die each year on average. Although more people are born, allegedly, so that the population figure continues to grow. Slightly more people are born than die each year. That means about an average of 12 million have died this year, I suppose. But actually, I think there's too often an assumption that we understand or know what death is, actually. And I think that's a big kind of issue of what it is, in fact. We tend to assume we're always talking about the same thing, whereas in actual fact, it can relate to different things and have such wildly differing concepts about it. Well, obviously, we tend to refer to death as being the death of our body, which is a natural decaying process, even without any illnesses or accidents or murders or injuries of any sort. Even without all those things, there would be a naturally decaying process anyway that happens, as you get to older age, elderly conditions affect you, and there's nobody therefore that survives or exists beyond a certain point. There's a natural deterioration process that happens, just as the body is naturally growing and expanding in different directions. Like the brain, for example, is growing throughout the teenage years, right up into the early 20s, up until about the age of 24, where it's reaching its natural, its growth peak, really, where it's as fully formed as it can be there, and is neurologically then at its peak and is able to sort of function at its best, I suppose, in its 20s onwards. So I suppose you're much more able to sort of cognitively have a better ability in some areas than others, according to the neurological growth at that point. But likewise, as you get to an older age, things decline more. You tend to have more neurological disorders that naturally come with age. People in their 80s, 90s and older are much more prone to things like that, and also to arthritis, which I just call wear and tear, really, just the body gradually breaking down, because it's been used so much extensively just for such a long period of time, and it's just a natural thing. You could almost call it entropy, couldn't you, really? The natural wear and tear that happens with everything. And actually, in fact, in everywhere you look and in everything, it happens, doesn't it? Cars gradually break down, machinery does, everything has a lifespan. Everything gradually breaks down and becomes chips or broken or stretched or tangled or maligned in whatever manner, but it gradually whether it's a machine, but it's important to state that we are talking about a machine, and we are talking about the physical sense of a person at that point. That is what that either through natural deterioration and the wear and tear processes, that longevity of process, or through an injury, an accident, or illnesses. The body breaks down and it fails at some point. And that would appear to most of us reasonable to suspect that that's a thing that affects everybody, just because we've all experienced it on personal level. It's something we've borne witness to personally ourselves. I recently lost my mother. She passed away, and she had an infectious illness. She had a number of conditions, actually. But I think what seems strange to me afterwards is how so many people referred to the body, the corpse, afterwards as her. And I found that strange, because I no longer thought of it as her. When I went to visit the corpse, the body, it was cold, it was lifeless, it was dead. There was nothing about her. And it says to me, it showed and it proved to me that what she was, who she is, her essence of being, her soul, her spirit, is not the body, but how she used or operated the body. And that's true of all of us. That's we are not defined by our body. And that's really my belief, I suppose, and many others too. And I think there's the famous philosophy quote that states that we are not somebody, we have somebody. I have an illness right now, but I am not ill myself. My body is ill. My body is been gradually breaking down and struggling to sort of mend itself with this thing. But, I think the issue that I have is that we have a tendency with our materialistic viewpoint to associate ourselves as being purely and only material, as being physical only, as being flesh and blood, as being machinery, as being just physiological. Now, we are within a physiological body, almost like a house, I suppose. Some people used to term it as a temple for the spirit. I kind of look at it either as a house, I suppose, or even a car, or like a vehicle that transports us, that allows us to travel about in, at least. But we have to differentiate between what we are ourselves and what we are within, and what we are experiencing, and what's surrounding us. And I think that to me is clear, when you look at somebody who's died and their corpse, you can't still equate that with them as a person. They have left at that point. I'm not saying I know what happens to the soul when the body dies, because I don't, except my own belief is that it's in God's hands and God judges us fairly. It's a very simple belief, but that's what I hold on to, and that's because my life experiences teach me that. I can't tell anyone or convince them of that. They must make their own conclusions from their own life experiences, and that's alone. What else can be the evidence in your life, I suppose, right? I could go through those and give you case by case example, and but I really feel that people must come to their own decisions, and it mustn't be other people's life experiences, because we're not always the best at reporting accurately. How can I give you an accurate viewpoint of everything that's gone on, and some of the incredible things that happened, over the minutes, the hours, the days, the weeks, the months, the years, the decades, the lifetimes. I can't give you an accurate recording of all of that. It's like I'm not even capable of, even with good intentions, in fact. And so I think I have to sort of go on the limited information that I've got, and take that credibly. And so it is my belief that we are some sort of soul, or however you define it, whatever it is. We are more than just a materialistic being. That is just something that houses us within us. And the death of the body is something that is certain. There's no doubt about that. How it will die, when it will die, where, why even, I guess, could be another thing, couldn't it, to look into. But I think it tends to be, and I made this assumption for too many years, thinking that the soul and the body are the same and not differentiating. and therefore assuming that death of the body is death of the soul, is the end of us, really. And it's only the end of us if we are only a body, if we are only a physical being. But I would say we're much more than that. Some people say we are mind as well, but actually we're even more than a psychological being. We're not just a mental being only. We also have an emotional dimension to us. We feel quite angry sometimes. We feel content. We feel joyful. We feel fearful. We feel happy and in love at other people. We feel overwhelmed or inspired by other people. We feel sad or depressed about other people. We feel uplifted and encouraged sometimes by others, and by many things indeed in the world. So, we are a whole range of a spectrum of different emotions, really. But I would say that we are, in essence, something that we can't really know or describe what it is that we are. And maybe we're here to find out what we are, and that's why we don't know, actually. Maybe that's part of our journey and our learning and our experience, to actually find out and to try and learn and research and find what it is we are. Are we a human having a spiritual experience, or are we a spirit actually having a human experience, in a human body? And, we may have other human experiences in other bodies, So I think I would be very wary to identify with the body, because doing that means necessarily identifying with the end of the body as being your end as well. Well, we don't know that. And the science is that we don't really know what the soul is. We can't really easily measure it. And it's almost something beyond the scope of scientific objective study. Something that can be contained within a laboratory setting, and something that can be sort of studied, because our studies of it are going to be affected by how we perceive things anyway, of course. So that will affect the results of any kind of study anyway. So I think it's a fascinating thing to think what we are. I personally think that we are some sort of soul, and that we are connected to other people through our soul, and that somehow God connects to all of us through the soul, and it's a really fascinating thing. But so I kind of feel, when I look at it, like the fact that you hear of hundreds of millions dying of accidents or illnesses, or but you have to remember that is the death of the body we're talking about. And what happens to your soul is something that is sort of either not known, or something, there's a debate about it. All I know is, I suppose, being strictly scientific, all I know is that the soul occupies the body for some duration, for some time. Although, interestingly, it goes to sleep every night for 8 hours a day on average for a third of its lifetime. It's sort of not actually using the body actively, and it sort of goes into a dream-like world for a third of the time. But all I know is like that the soul occupies the body for a length of time, and then it goes, and then it's left. But where it goes, how it goes, to what it goes, when, and I don't know. But it doesn't mean it doesn't go somewhere, and it could mean that it goes in a way that we don't understand, and it's beyond our understanding. I'm quite capable of believing in so many things beyond my understanding, so I don't find it that hard. I believe in technology because I see it, and I don't understand how a lot of it functions or works, but it does. I don't know how the sun and the moon revolve, and I don't know how stars do. I don't know how all these countless wonders of the world exist and fascinate us for centuries, millenniums, but they do. I can't explain the incredible phenomenons. I can't explain reincarnation, how a soul can leave one body, where it goes, and then it can reappear in a different body in a different place. I can't explain it, but it can happen, and I believe it does. And so I kind of think, in terms of diseases, illnesses, accidents that affect the body, yes, I think it is a serious issue. I think it is serious in as much as it's something that people live with, and it's actually living with it that is the serious issue, because people can suffer with those things, not just for minutes and hours, but sometimes conditions affect them for serious illnesses, days, weeks, months. Some people have conditions for years and years, of course. So it's the quality of life and the amount of suffering and pain and the hardship and the type of support that that person has through those experiences. That's what's kind of more important to me, I suppose. Not whether the body finishes at some point, because it's bound to, and of course it will. We've known that for thousands of years, but it's a quality of how it lives, how it's able to, I suppose, how it copes with those illnesses, how it is able to manage, how it's able to deal with that. And I suppose it's, you can't help being given a disease or an accident at the wrong time. That's sad, but that's the cards you're played in life. But it's how you play them, I suppose. It's how you deal with that, isn't it? And so all of us, through the trials of life, might have to face an endurance of a long-term illness, injuries resulting from an accident, or an incident of some sort. Any number of different conditions might affect us, and we might have to endure them, or a family or close friends might have to, and we might have to support them through that. So it's how we deal with those things, really, I suppose, over the long term. And I guess, when people say, what's the purpose of those things, I can only see that as the only real credible purpose, that at least it's a test of endurance, I suppose, to that extent, where, very much in the spirit of the book of Job, where, people go through various things to test what their soul is about, and to test how able they are to cope in their relationship to their fellow man and to God and to the world in general, and to how it affects them. And it is a test, isn't it, really? It's hard to be as loving and compassionate and caring about others when you're suffering each day and you're going through a lot of pains and you're struggling physically with the condition, and it limits how much you can help people and help yourself. And it puts you in a vulnerable position where you're needing to depend on other people more. It's funny, really, because we all begin that way. We all begin as children, or we all begin as babies, as newborn infants, where we're totally dependent on the world, on others around us, of course. And in that kind of help that any of us can return to, through illness, through accident, through old age even, we can very much have, a real test, a real endurance. And I guess through that dependency on others, we can't we can't change how other people deal with us during that. Some people might take advantage of that situation.